Did you know that birthdays are pagan? Well, we are going to talk about it. Number one, birthdays didn't begin until calendars were created. Early civilizations had no way to keep track of time other than by using the moon, sun, and some other important events. This made it difficult for them to pay attention to the anniversary of a person's birth. As time went on, everyone realized that they all experienced the effects of aging. They just didn't have a means to mark a special milestone for it. It wasn't until ancient people began taking note of the moon's cycle that they began paying attention to the change in seasons as well. They also noticed this pattern repeated itself over and over again. They began marking these changes in time. This is what bore the first calendars, which marked time changes and other special days. From this type of tracking system came the ability to celebrate birthdays and other significant events and anniversaries each year. Number two, it all started with Egyptians. Scholars who study the Bible say that the earliest mention of a birthday was around 3000 BCE and was in reference to a pharaoh's birthday. But further study implies that this was not their birth into the world, but their birth as a god. When Egyptian pharaohs were crowned in ancient Egypt, they were considered to have transformed into gods. This was a moment in their lives that became more important than even their physical birth. Pagans such as the ancient Greeks believed that each person had a spirit that was present on the day of his or her birth. This spirit kept watch and had a mystic relation with the god on whose birthday that particular individual was born. Number three, you can thank Greeks for all those birthday candles. Gods and goddesses were a huge part of Greek culture. Greeks offered many tributes and sacrifices to appease these gods. The lunar goddess, Artemis, was no different. As a tribute to her, the Greeks would offer up moon-shaped cakes adorned with lit candles to recreate the glowing radiance of the moon and Artemis' perceived beauty. The candles also symbolized the sending of a signal or prayer. Blowing out these candles with a wish is another way of sending that message to the gods. Number four, birthdays first started as a form of protection. It is assumed that the Greeks adopted the Egyptian tradition of celebrating the quote birth end quote of a god. They, like many other pagan cultures, thought that days of major change, such as these quote birth end quote days, welcomed evil spirits. They lit candles in response to these spirits almost as if they represented a light in the darkness. This implies that birthday celebrations started as a form of protection. In addition to candles, friends and family would gather around the birthday person and protect them from harm with good cheers, thoughts, and wishes. They would give gifts to bring even more good cheer that would ward off evil spirits. Noisemakers would also use to scare away the unwanted evil. Number five, the ancient Romans were the first to celebrate the birth of the common man. This seems to be the first time in history where a civilization celebrated the birth of non-religious figures. Regular Roman citizens would celebrate the birthdays of their friends and family members. The government, however, created public holidays in honor of more famous citizens. Any Roman turning 50 years old would receive a special cake baked with wheat flour, olive oil, grated cheese, and honey. But an important thing to note is that only men would experience this birthday celebration. Female birthdays were not celebrated until about the 12th century. Number six, birthdays were first considered to be a pagan ritual in Christian culture. In Christianity, it is believed that all people are born with, quote, original sin, end quote. That, in combination with early birthdays being tied to pagan gods, led Christians to consider birthdays to be celebrations of evil. This lasted for the first few hundred years of the existence of the Christian church. It wasn't until 4th century that Christians abandoned that way of thinking and began celebrating the birth of Jesus, also known as Christmas. Celebrating the birth of Jesus was partly enacted to recruit those who already celebrated Saturnalia, the Roman holiday. Number 7. German bakers invented the birthday cake as we know it today. At this point, birthdays had been celebrated around the world, even in China, where a child's first birthday was more special than most. Kinderfest, which started in the late 18th century, was the name for a German birthday party that is closest to today's style of parties. This party was held for German kids, or quote, Kinder, end quote, and featured a birthday cake adorned with candles. Kids were given one candle atop the cake for each year they had been alive, plus one for the hope of living for at least one more year. Blowing out these candles while making a wish was a big part of these celebrations. So now we're going to break down the props of birthdays. For example, birthday greetings, wishes, cake, and the candle and what they represent, okay? Originally, the idea of birthday greetings and wishes for happiness was rooted in magic. The working of spells for good and evil is the chief usage of witchcraft. One is especially susceptible to such spells on his birthday, as one's personal spirits are about at that time. Dreams dreamed on the birthday eve should be remembered, for they are predictions of the future brought by the guardian spirits, which hover over one's bed on the birthday eve. Birthday greetings have power for good or ill because one is closer to the spirit world on this day. Good wishes bring good fortune, but the reverse is also true. So one should avoid enemies on one's birthday and be surrounded only by well-wishers. Quote, happy birthday, end quote, and many more happy returns of the day, end quote, are the traditional greetings, end quote. The giving of birthday gifts is a custom associated with the offering of sacrifices to pagan gods on their birthdays. Certainly, the custom was linked with the same superstitions that formed the background for birthday greetings. The exchange for presents is associated with the importance of ingratiating good and evil fairies on their or our birthdays. The traditional birthday cake and candles also have their origin in ancient pagan idol worship. The ancients believed that the fire of candles had magical properties. They offered prayers and made wishes to be carried to the gods on the flames of the candles. Thus, we still have the widely practiced birthday custom of making a wish, then blowing out the candles. The Greeks celebrated the birthday of their moon goddess Artemis with cakes adorned with lighted candles. So now I'm going to speak on this from a biblical standpoint, and now listen to my son while he shares his standpoint.
The Bible speaks in general, so it's not going to specifically tell you what not to do, but it's going to give you a general standpoint and then hint at stuff you shouldn't be doing. So, for example, the Bible is not going to tell you not to cheat. It's going to tell you not to commit adultery. So, for example, in Matthew 5, verse 27 and 28, you heard that it was said, you must not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who keeps on looking at a woman so as to have a passion for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart.
See what I'm trying to say? So it's basically using your common sense and your knowledge and wisdom that you learned from the Bible. First and foremost, Jehovah loves when we enjoy life and have gatherings, eat, laugh, and have fun. He likes festivities. Ecclesiastes 8:15, Ecclesiastes 9:7. Clearly, the Creator realizes the joy that comes from festive occasions. This does not mean that all types of celebrations meets God's approval. Many that are popular in the world today heap honor on persons and institutions that the scriptures portray as ungodly. The Bible, however, condemns the use of magic, divination, spiritism, or anything like this. Deuteronomy 18, verse 14. Galatians 5, verse 19 through 21. The Bible only mentions 2 birthdays, and they weren't good. In fact, the first one that they mentioned was Pharaoh's birthday. In Genesis 40, verse 20. Now the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he made a feast for all his servants. And he brought out both the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his servants. Verse 21. And he returned the chief cupbearer to his post of cupbearer, and he continued to hand the cup to Pharaoh. Verse 22. But he hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had interpreted to them. Now we're going to talk about Herod, Matthew 14, 6 through 11. But when Herod's birthday was being celebrated, the daughter of Herodias danced for the occasion and pleased Herod so much that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked. Then she, at her mother's prompting, said, "Give me her on a platter." The head of John the Baptist. Grieved though he was, the king, out of regard for his oaths and for those dining with him, commanded it to be given. Verse 10. So he sent and had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, and she brought it to her mother.